Welcome to the Bearded Finisher Podcast, your one-stop show for all things finishing and coatings. Your host, Zach, and a variety of industry experts will guide you through the art of perfecting your finishing and business game. From seasoned pros to fresh faces, get ready for tips, tricks, and trends to elevate your knowledge and business to the next level.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Bearded Finisher Podcast. Today we have got Mr. Ryan Randall, director at Elevated Finishing. They are the team behind Schubox. What's going on, Ryan?
Hey, Zach, how you doing, buddy? I appreciate you having me on, big guy.
Oh, man, I appreciate you coming on. I've been following you guys on social media and just obsessed with the Schubox heating system that you guys have. I had one in my shop when I had it in Oklahoma, and it was, a engineer buddy of mine. He was like, I said, man, I've got to dry this paint faster. And he says, okay. So we built a 10 by 10 room out of metal studs and put some sheetrock in there. And then we painted it with that aluminum reflective heat paint.
Really?
And then we put a heating system in there, like a house heating system, and ran a duct down the middle of it or on the back wall.
It's like a hot air kind of thing.
Just blowing hot air. And then the return at the top was piped right back into the out. So it was hot air out and then hot air right back in. So it was just a closed system.
Just recirculating
hot air. And, thermostat had that thing at, on average, about 130.
Did you have an exhaust on it? Were you getting it out of that room anyway, or?
We had a little bit of exhaust on the front side. We had vents down there so it wouldn't get too hot in there, so we could control it. But I had a timer on there. I mean, it was, as my wife's grandfather would call it, it was, for its time, it was pretty awesome, but it was pretty field expedited, shall we say?
Yeah, understood. One of those things where it's like, hey, there's a problem. Let's fix it the best way I can fix it now.
Exactly. Well, then my best friend since the third grade, he's a electrical engineer, professional electrical engineer. And every time I need to do something that was just like, throwing up the bat signal to him to engineer some weird shit that I could have never thought of. And he's just man. Challenge accepted. Let's do it.
Yeah, no, we see that a lot, actually. Like, I'm in a lot of rooms where, people have built a wall, they built a little corner, they put some heat in there, whatever kind they can get a hold of. And they just patch it, man, because curing parts, man, is a pain in the butt for people.
I mean, literally watching paint dry. That's the slowest part.
Yeah. I mean, people hate it. People hate watching paint dry and grass grow, man. It's just like, it's not a cool thing. So, yeah, we see that a lot, actually, as we're traveling and seeing shops. Like, hey, we're just trying to figure this out.
Yeah, just trying to figure it all out. Well, let's kind of kick it off like I normally like to. Just kind of share your story. I know you've had the journey to get over to Elevated. So, tell us how you got into the business and how that progressed over to Elevated.
Sure. Well, I've really only been in the actual finishing industry about 10 years now, coming up on 11. I was not in the industry really at all prior to that. I was actually here in North Carolina where I live. Tobacco is the big thing, right? And so I worked for RJ Reynolds, a cigarette maker. And I was I worked in their shop. I was kind of always been a wrencher, right? I always like building things and making things. And so I've always wrenched on stuff, and there kind of worked on that for a little while. And, probably 8 years, I worked for the tobacco company, and I just got kind of tired of it. I got bored, and it was just, I was like, this can't be it, right? I can't be sitting here, making tobacco products for the rest of my life. Good job, but I just got bored. I was starting a family, and it's just, I need to do something else. So I had the bright idea of, what's big right now is computer programming, right? Like, everyone wants to be a programmer. And so I was like, let's just try that. And so I took this, really, quick, I mean, what they call them, it's like a crash course, I guess, but it's like, 12-week, become a programmer in 12 weeks. The whole prompt's like, we'll get you a job. We're going to teach you how to code. We'll do all these things in 12 weeks. And I was like, sweet, let's do it. I'm in. And so I did the course, and it was good. I mean, I learned a lot. It actually was helpful. It was good for me to learn how some of the back end of some of the things worked, right? It's helpful to know that behind every machine you see, there's a whole lot of code going on. Behind every program, behind everything, there's a lot of programming. So it was helpful for me to kind of take that step and learn it and do it. I didn't love it, honestly. It was something different. So it was helpful in that way. But as soon as I got a job, and they delivered, right? I got a job out of it. So it was like, great, I got a job. And they placed me because they use this staffing agency. Everything in tech is through a staffing agency, it seems like. And they placed me in a job, started, and 3 months later, they shut the whole thing down. I got laid off, like just flat, no warning. I should have seen the red flag because the hiring manager or the manager is like, I wasn't expecting them to bring anybody else in. I was like, here I am. And so I worked there for a couple months, and then I think he knew, like, hey, we're about to shut this place down. What is this? And so, they shut the place down, and I was out of a job, young family, out of a job, laid off. And I was like, oh boy, this was, at the time I was like, this is a horrible, horrible decision. Why did I do this? I had a cushy job. It wasn't cushy, but it was like, I had a good job. I was steady. I knew it was coming every day, and took a chance, to try to do something bigger and better, and really fell on my face with it. So from that point, it's like, okay, now what do we do? So I really just hopped on the job search engine, man. It's like, hey, who's hiring? Who has something for me? Where can I work?
Yeah.
And
got to eat.
That's when Styles showed up. I didn't know who they were. I had no idea. I had no idea what the woodworking network community, anything was. Like, I had no idea the depth of it. I mean, I knew there was woodworking, but my idea was like, hey, these artisans and craftsmen making crazy furniture and like doing all these high-end things, right? And my dad, like growing up, my dad owned a remodeling business, so I knew, about the remodeling side of things, right? Every summer and weekend, like I think it's your story too. Like you were working with your dad. I think you were in the shop, weren't you? You think, hey, I got to go to the shop. That's just what it is. But so weekends and, summers, like that was my job, picking up trash, helping dad carry stuff, learning a little bit about the trade.
So you had a good foundation of what was involved.
Yeah. And it gave me a good idea of it. And then like, we always worked on our own stuff, right? Like, we grew up, you just fix stuff, when we grew up, you didn't just buy a new thing. You worked on your car, you worked on your house, you just fixed stuff. And so I had that foundation going into it. And then my previous work experiences, and so anyway, I got a call back from Styles to come in. They're looking for what they called an application engineer, but a lab manager, someone to work in the lab to run demos and tests and things like that. And I was like, I guess it sounds like I can do it, and so the interview went well, met with them, and said, well, let's go. And so I started, and you know a guy named Perry Merrier? He works for Exalta now.
I know of Perry. I don't think I've ever met him, but I know of him.
Perry was basically my boss. I worked for him in the lab, and Perry is really where I got all my education in finishing and in the machinery and in that whole world, the whole world of it. He brought me in, and I learned, what a flatline was. I learned what a coating was, and, worked with him, installed the machines, so it was more than just the finishing. We also did sanding machines. Worked in that for years with him, and, just soaked it all up because guys like you, paint guys, would come in. That's what our demos, right? We would spray paint. We'd see how it laid down. We'd work on it. We'd mix it up. We'd fix it. We'd just do everything we could with the coatings themselves to make it look good on the machine. Because as you know, going from a hand spray to a flat line, there's some tweaking. Like, it's not the same.
No. There's a learning curve and there's a coding curve too. The coatings aren't the same.
Yeah, there absolutely is. And so I learned a ton. I was there for, almost 8 years. Eventually worked my way up through it and became a product specialist selling the finishing, the sanders, right? I was in the finishing arm. So I sold the equipment, in different regions. I was in the Northeast. I was in like the Great Lakes area. I did a little bit in South Central in your area. I've been all over Texas and Oklahoma and all that land. And so that's just kind of where I got my foundation in coatings. And like all the coatings guys were super helpful. So I know this is a finishing podcast, but I'm not a finisher by trade, or a coatings guy by trade, but I know about them. I use them. I have to interact with them constantly.
Yeah. The whole purpose that I got driven to this podcast was just there's a lot of finishing guys that don't know about coatings, and there's a lot of coatings guys that don't know about finishing. It's just kind of like, let's bring everybody together, because there's going to be some guy on here that's listening to this that is in small town trying to figure out, when we get into Schubox, trying to figure out how to dry his parts faster so we can flip them. I mean, just the open line of communication was the biggest part of it. The gap between a lot of the manufacturers and the applicators, there's a huge gap from what I see.
I agree 100%. And just sometimes there's technology out there you just didn't know about. Right. And so I've learned a ton listening, because, I've listened to it ever since we first met, and I was like, I'm going to check this out. And it's been really helpful. Honestly, it's been helpful for me to understand coatings a little bit better, because like there are some legit coatings nerds on here that's like, whoa, I didn't know all that happened. And so it's been really good for me, because I'm a machine nerd. Like I've always been a machinery guy that has to interact, because that's the machine we use. Like I have to understand how a conversion varnish works. I have to understand what a 2K poly works, how it works, what it's supposed to do, water-based stuff. I need to understand all that, because our systems interact with them constantly. And so it's just something I need to know. It's been great.
Definitely. And then from styles, you went on to you were a renter.
I was,
right?
Yep. From styles. So the transition from styles. So what ended up happening is with styles, I just got so busy, and I traveled all the time. Like I was just gone. And, it came to a point where I was sacrificing my family. I was missing stuff. I was not present when I needed to be. And that was just, as it's growing, it's always been kind of a non-negotiable, right? Like, hey, I gotta be around my family. Like I want to see my kids grow up. I want to be around them. I want to have an influence. I just want to know them. And so Styles was a fantastic company. I loved working for them. It just got to a point where what I was doing was not sustainable for my family. It just wasn't. I just couldn't do it.
I'm a big proponent of family first. I mean, jobs are important, but
jobs, they provide for your family. And like, if you provide and you don't have a family, what's the point, right? To me, that's my take.
Agreed. Yes.
And so, renter came calling, and in that world, when you have a bunch of coatings companies in all the time, and you're semi-competent, as I like to claim I am, semi-competent, they're going to ask you, like, hey, do you want a job? Like, hey, do you want a job? You want to cover this territory? You want to go to this? You want to go to that? And so renter was one that had been around before. And I talked to them, and I knew those guys pretty well, because I've done a lot of demos for them.
And they're in your neck of the woods. They're over there.
They're in Charlotte, right? They're right down the road. Yeah, they're right down the road in Charlotte. And so it was a short trip for me. And the other thing was, like, it was going to be a real regional. Like, it's going to be around me. Like, the people I was going to see, I drive to, right? I'm not flying across the country. I'm driving down the road, and I'm driving back.
That's a huge benefit.
And so I was like, well, okay. So we got to the point where, like, okay, let's give it a shot, right? And I worked for them not even a year. Sometimes the fit's not right. And Renner's a good company. They got great products. They have great, R&D. I got to go over there and see their R&D and what they do. And they really do a wonderful job. I think their distribution's pretty good. I mean, they have wonderfully smart people. Like, they really do. Leo's great. And, like, all of them. And even on the West Coast, Mirko and all those guys and Marco, like, they're all really good. And it just wasn't for me. It wasn't the right fit. It wasn't the right situation. It wasn't the right place. And not to disparage those guys at all. It's just, as you know, sometimes the fit's not there.
Yeah. I mean, from my experience on the coating side, from the user to the coatings manufacturing, it's another beast. Like, it is a monster in itself to fully understand the ins and the outs and what goes to making a coating and testing a coating, and versus like equipment. It's, you sell equipment, then you kind of maintenance, and it pretty much takes care of itself. I mean, coatings is constant. Like, it is a constant battle because you just, environment, especially like Renter North America. I mean, for me, it was, Centurion, because our focus was primarily water-based coatings. And that's, if I'm correct, that's all Renter North America does is water-based. They don't do solvent.
Nope. The only time they'll bring in solvent is for a very large customer, like a big OEM.
Yeah, bring it in from Italy. Yeah.
Well, we don't. There's no solvent manufacturing in the U.S. at all.
It's just, when you start talking about water-based coatings, you get into what I call the ultimate equalizer, which is Mother Nature. I don't give a shit how good you think you are. You can have it figured out perfect, and Mother Nature's going to throw you a screwball, and it's always the coating's fault.
That's right. Well, the fun part of the machinery to coatings, relationship is like, it's the machine, man. It's not doing it right. It's not spraying. It's not curing like it's supposed to. It's like, nah, dude, these coatings are weird. What's going on with these coatings? It's a bad batch. I swear it's a bad batch.
I've been there. I can't countless times. It's like this. It's your fault.
Yeah, it's right. All that trash in your paint is from your coatings. There's no way it's coming off of this machine. It's like, no way. It's in the machine. So, I know you fought that battle. I mean, at the end, we're all trying to, make the end customer very happy. But
exactly.
It's a fun little back and forth from time to time. So yeah, Mother Nature is definitely the equalizer in that. We've seen it. I've seen it, and that's just kind of what we do. So anyway, to digress a little bit, while I was at Renner, so moving on to how I got to elevated finishing is while I was at Renner and while I was at Styles, really the Lance and Kobe Johnson and Kyle and all those guys out there in Utah with advanced machinery, I had worked with them multiple times on multiple occasions, with different machinery issues or even helping them with coding side stuff and just kind of some application issues, whether it's with the sanders or with the Flatlines or things like that. I'd worked through them, had a great relationship. They're an excellent company. And, actually it was Lance, one of the owners who first approached me with it while I was with Renner. He's like, we have this product that's really starting to blow up a little bit here around us. And we're starting to get more and more requests outside of our area, right? Not that they couldn't go outside their area. They just like, this is where we live. We want to stay here. We're not interested in taking everything out. And so I was like, yeah, that sounds interesting. And, I had heard of the Schubox. Like I kind of heard of it relatively, here and there. I knew they were doing a good job with it. I'd never really seen one until I went out there when I was actually traveling with Renner with them for a few different applications there. And I was like, this is cool. Looks good. And, we just started talking. And this whole time while we're talking, I'm not loving the coatings job. I'm just not loving it. It's just different than what I thought and just wasn't a great fit for me. And so, we started talking and, we had a few meetings and we got everyone together. I talked to, the manufacturers over in England and, we just kind of had like a brainstorm of like, hey, what is this? What could this be? How do we want to do this? And eventually we came to a place where, let's do this. Let's start something because I think that the need is there. The market's there. There's not a lot of curing rooms out in the market at all. And so I think that's a really big hole that we're working to fill. And so we started Elevated Finishing. Right? We're a company of Advanced Machinery. So Advanced is a dealer in the Utah, Idaho, Montana area. And what's crazy is they saw the need first, right? They're out there and they're like, hey, we're selling Flatlines, great, but not everyone has the budget or the space to put a flat oven in there, because those things take up space and they're expensive.
They're huge. I mean, the flash time, the flash off that you have to have on a Flatline to go into, whether it's an IR or, non-direct heat source in the oven that bakes it, and the conveyor, then it's got to come out and got to have cool off time. I mean, those are huge lines. Those things are like over 100 foot long.
Yeah, some of them are 100 foot. I mean, some at the shortest, you're at 60 foot, 50 foot, 60 foot, and that's at the shortest. And there's a budget aspect to that too. They're not inexpensive pieces of equipment, and so you're investing pretty heavily, one, in square footage in your shop, but also in the utilities and in the cost of the oven. Now, in the right application, like, they're wonderful, right? If you have the space, you have the budget, you have the throughput, you have all those things, controlling all that is fantastic. So I'm not cutting that down at all. It's wonderful to have, but as you know, man, most shops don't have that. Right? Most shops don't have that space or the capital to put all that in. Now, if they want to put a Flatline in, that's easier to do, but then you're just kind of moving your bottleneck down to curing. I mean, you can spray racks and racks and racks and racks of parts, but they're still sitting, right? And so the guys out at Advanced Machinery were like, hey, we're missing something here. There's got to be something that we can get into. And there are some other little systems here and there that, people use, but they wanted something that was theirs, really, honestly. They were very forward thinking when it came to that. And so they found this online, and they just called Mark Schubert, whose grandpa started the company. They called him directly and said, hey, what's your ovens all about? What do these things do? How do they work? What do they do? And so they just started talking. And that was about 3 years ago. And, started one here, one there. We had to get some things adjusted, some things, worked out for the U.S. market, because, it's different than Europe. But they had been going into Canada for a little while. Like, the Schubox has been in Canada for a while. So he wasn't completely foreign to North America. But, again, Canada's different yet again from
very much so.
So
next door, but very different.
Yeah, we had to figure it out. But it's been going really well. We started elevated finishing to kind of bring the Schubox outside of that market, because once it got going in that market, it spread like wildfire. I bet in the Salt Lake area, into Idaho, there's probably 40 plus of these, just in that region. And so it really caught on. It's done a really good job. And so then Red brought me on. I've been doing it about 10 months now, really. We're still new in this game. We're still trying to get our feet set and planted, still building a foundation for how we want to go about it, and just kind of figuring stuff out every day.
So, I mean, if I'm talking, if we're talking 40 in the Salt Lake area versus like a linear inline drying equipment, the cost effectiveness has got to be
huge.
Huge. I mean, just like cost versus cost. I mean,
yeah,
these things.
I would say most of the time it's a quarter of the price. I would say, yeah, of what a full Flatline drying system would be.
So if you're talking a small cabinet shop wanting to get a 10 by 10 or an 8 by 10, something like that, like ballpark installation, are we talking 10 to 20, 30 to 40?
No, you're under $100,000 is what you are.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah. You're under $100,000. And so when you talk about a full system, you're well above that. And then floor space, right? They come in, what we have found most people will use is an 8 by 8 by 16 foot long piece, so they can get their 12-foot trim in there. If people do a bunch of 20-foot trim, we have a 20-foot option. People do a lot of 16-foot trim, we'll have a 20-foot option. And so we find those two lengths are really all anybody needs. And we do 12 footers as well if space is a real crunch. What's nice is we can customize it to anything. Like we've done 12 foot wide by 12 foot tall by 30 foot long, right? Like we can customize this oven to fit anything. And so we have a wide variety. We've done L-shaped ovens. We've done ovens through walls. We've done all these things. So we have a huge variety of options, but obviously there's cost savings in stocking.
What about so how does the heat source generate? Is it, like an air mover? Is it catalytic IR, or do you have options on that side?
No, what we use exclusively is what's called a long wave infrared. So it's a catalytic infrared. What's different is we're not creating any kind of combustion at all. What it is to be nerdy about it, it's exothermic chemical reaction. So platinum is a universal catalyst, right? It reacts with all kinds of solvents, gases, and most of the time when you heat platinum and you pass a gas across it, it creates a chemical reaction. And so in our situation, we take a ceramic mesh that's infused with platinum, and we heat it up and we pass gas across it. And so when that gas is coming across it, it creates the exothermic chemical reaction, which is emitting long wave infrared and some heat. The way we capture that is on the inside of our room is all reflective stainless steel, right? So it's unidirectional. We're not moving panels or getting stuff situated in such a way to cure it. We're using just the long wave. We're reflecting it across the entire room because everything in there is reflective, and it hits every part, everywhere, no matter where you put it inside the box. And so it's really not even an oven because we try to keep the temperature low. Like we usually run from 110 to 90 degrees, somewhere in that window, to keep the temperature down, because we get this full cure because the way the long wave penetrates the coatings, it gets down to the bottom and it cures bottom up, not a top down cure.
Not top down, like shortwave is a little more directional.
Shortwave is less penetrating. Yeah, it's just the nature of the wavelength. Shortwave, and then you got medium. Most of the IR you see in the market today is medium wave. The lamps are medium wave. The gas fired panels are all medium wave. They're using a similar idea, but ours just emits long wave because of the way we use the platinum, and we don't have to use oxygen as well to create our long wave. So it's a very, very nice way of creating a curing situation. And so that we do use heat. I mean, obviously we use a little bit of heat, and we use air movement. So everything in there, we recirculate the air, and we baffle the exhaust based on, if it's water, we want it wide open because really get the water out. Right.
Need to get that humidity out of there. Yeah.
Let's move this air and let's get the water out and let's let the
so a baffle exhaust. That's pretty genius.
Yeah. And so when we're using a solvent, like if we're curing a solvent-based paint, we actually close it off a little bit more, because what that does is there's actually some active VOC oxidation inside that room. So as we recirculate the air, because that platinum is a catalyst, we pass those VOCs that are off gassing, we recirculate them back across the face of that emitter and we oxidize them, right? Similar to the way an RTO would.
Yeah. I was going to say, you just kind of built in RTO.
It's basically what it is. And so the longer you leave it in there, the more that off gassing then gets passed across, the more we change chemically the structure of that VOC. Now, it's not going to chemically change the structure of an acid catalyst. That's the one thing that it doesn't mess with. But all the other solvents in there, it's going to convert them to either water vapor or carbon dioxide.
Like if it's a precat, your acetones, anything like that.
And so that's the way it works, and that's what we do with them.
That's pretty awesome. I didn't know it was that involved. I mean, we were talking offline. I had one that I kind of field expedited when I had my finishing shop, and it got the job done. But when you start putting the science behind it, it makes a lot of sense.
Well, what's cool is like, because a lot of times with hot air and just ambient air, it's a top down cure, right? You're curing the top, and then just get your curing gets slower and slower and slower because your film gets thicker and thicker and thicker, and you can't get what's at the bottom up, right? Especially in hot environments because it scabs fast. And so with this, we keep temperature as low as we can. We want to keep it low because we want time for the long wave infrared to get in there and pull the solvents bottom up. So by the time we get to the top and have a cure, like there's nothing left underneath, right? It's gone.
You're a full cure. You're not just, that's always whenever you try to make your own, that was always the scary part with water bases. Yeah, your top's cure, but you start sanding it and then you put another coat on it, depending on what you have underneath as your primer. Or come a couple hours later, if it's water-based clear, you've got a little bit of cloudy blushing because all the moisture wasn't out and the top's scabbed over, or it's hard, but the underneath is soft. And
it's the same way, yeah. In humid environments with solvent, right, you get blushing, right? You get water trapped, and so we found to be effective, and we find it it just works really well because again, the reaction is platinum, which is a noble metal. It never degrades or goes away. So
yeah, so you don't have to replace it.
It's always going to react. The only thing that'll kill it is the dust, right? If you let your room get full of dust, it'll eventually just build a wall. You'll still have the reaction happening, but you just have a wall of oxidized dust that it doesn't get through, or carbonized dust it doesn't get through. So really, the only maintenance on these is keep those emitters, the face of them clean, just brush them down, and keep them clean. And other than that, you turn it on in the morning, it runs all day. You walk in and out of it. You do whatever you want to. You bring your parts in and out. You turn it off at the end of the day. There's no batch times. There's no maneuvering carts. You just roll them in and roll them out. And honestly, it's hyper efficient, right? Very low power requirements, very low gas requirements. Most of the times, all in power and gas is you're at $20 a day total. And so super efficient. Like it's just an efficient way to cure. And the technology, because it's all sealed, we control temperature inside, we control the long wave it's reflecting. We maintain an environment that's just conducive to curing in a very clean way. And
for the community guys out there that are thinking like, well, what's the efficiency on dry time? So a standard water-based 2K polyurethane. A lot of guys are going towards water-based. You're in the world of, 1 to 2 hours, depending on ambient temperature for sand and recoat. So something like your system, what does that change it to?
So as you know, there's huge, I got to put huge airbags around every different coating, but most of what we have seen, for a primer, so it's directly related to solid content, right? The more carrier, liquids we have to get out, usually takes a little longer. We got more to dry. So primers, you're talking about ready to sand, 10 minutes. Pull them out, sand them, cured, ready to go. Top coats, anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes. Full cure, pack it, stack it, flip it on a rack.
Stackable in 40. Plastic wrap, you're good.
Yeah. Almost always. So there's a little bit of lead time when you get out to let it come back down. But what's nice is we're not putting a lot of temperature in it. So there's not a lot of time to get the temperature back out. We keep the temperature.
I was just about to hit on that. Since you don't go real hot, my room was always $140. So, once you bring it out, you have to let it sit to get back down to a temperature where you can sand and spray it.
It's true. And so with these, there's not a lot of that. And also there's not imagine if you put it into a $140 room, you have to have some serious flash time to let that stuff lay down before you put that kind of heat on it. Because then you'll get all kinds of problems. You get blistering and cracking and just a mess.
Yeah. You always had to let it. I mean, if you sprayed a rack, by the time you got done with the top one, let it sit. Most of it was flashed off if you're spraying a 50 piece, but being able to go in that quick, because everybody eventually always has one door that looks like crap or something out of 50, and they're like, oh, respray those doors, and then they just carry them and put them in there, and I'm just like, God damn it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just true. But that's also a big feedback we're getting with this is like the ability to like, hey, I need to rush this order. I don't have, especially for conversion varnishes and stuff. Like, I don't have to wait a day to get this back out. Like, I can turn this job today and get it out the door. It just helps a ton in people's predictability of, hey, this job is in my paint shop. I'm not exactly sure how long it's going to be in there. I'm going to do my best to get it cured. But like you said, with water base, I mean, I hope Mother Nature works with me here. But you know, you don't know. You just don't know. And so, this just gives you control. It's all we're about. Like, hey, you now have control over your finishing output, and in a relatively, no, it's not a cheap piece of equipment, right? It's well engineered. We install it, and we show you how to run it. But it is effective, and we haven't had a bad install. Like I could probably have anybody call any one of our installs and like, hey, how did this go? What was it like? What was your experience with our technicians like? How has it worked? Did they overpromise and underdeliver, or the opposite, right? And so, that's really, really important to us. Very, very important to us. We're gonna stand behind everything we do.
Do you guys stock some of, like, though you said the most common, the 16-footer and the 20-footer? Do you guys stock those in the Carolinas, or is everything brought over on an as needed basis?
No, everything we stock them in Utah. Actually, Advanced Machinery is headquartered in Utah, and so we stock everything into Utah and ship it from there. We do try to keep some stock. We don't really keep anything there. Most of the time, by the time the container gets here, everything has a name on it most of the time, and so they're just going right.
What's your guys' lead time running right now?
If I ordered a custom one, from manufacturing to here, you're about 5 months. If you wanted to order a Schubox today, you could have it next month, and so pretty quick.
Yeah, that's quick for coming from the UK. I was like, all right, so coming from the UK, you guys are looking at about a 30 to probably 60 days out on a stock one.
Yeah, because we have them on their way pretty regular. So we're like, hey, the next shipment's coming next month. And really, most of the time, you need at least a month because you have to get your space prepared. And so,
get the power brought in and all that good stuff.
Get the power run, get your gas situated, and we got to schedule an install. And so, that's usually at the lowest the amount of time you need to get ready for it.
That's pretty good lead time right there. What about demos? Do you guys have them there both in Charlotte or in North Carolina and in Utah if someone wants to come in and be able to spray some coatings and test them? How do you guys work that out?
Well, so far we rely on the goodwill of all the people we've installed them in.
Hey, that's a good way to go. And
so that is in the plans. We are going to open some test centers. We do the one in Utah. We have a wonderful customer right across the street from our facility that's always open. Like it's just a nice relationship with those guys. It's Trimart, Tyler Ney at Trimart, Lean Brothers. He's got a pretty big presence online.
Who is it?
Tyler Ney, Trimart. He's part of the Lean Brothers. He has a YouTube channel.
Yeah. That's like a built-in success story right across the street. You got salesmen right over there, don't even work for you, selling it.
It's true. Well, that's kind of how we like to move it out. Like, hey, like we would rather the people who have these in their shops, because as you know, as a salesman, you get this rap about you're just trying to sell me something. It's like, sure, yes, but like, why don't you talk to the people who have these things and who run them every day and whose businesses are different because of them now? Like, chat with them. Like, you don't even have to talk to me anymore. I'll organize whatever you need. because that's really where the success is. Like, people who are using them every day.
Oh yeah. I mean, success stories, the origin story videos, and people talking about it, of how it benefited their business. That's what people want to see. They want to see the results. I mean, you and I both know what happens when salesmen walk into doors.
Yes, exactly right. Like, what do you want? And I find that, like, calling up leads and stuff is like, I mean, the percentage of people that actually pick up the phone when they don't know you is, especially now with all the spam that's going on.
And I still say, in a couple other episodes, I've talked about it. Like, whenever I was looking for customers, I would just drive around and look for paint booth exhaust.
Yeah.
If I saw a paint booth exhaust on the top of a building, I don't care what I'm on my way to. I'm either writing down the address, taking a picture if I can't stop, or I'm stopping just to drop off a card. I mean,
that's exactly right.
So it was the best way, especially in your area. I mean, you got paint booth stacks, probably a dime a dozen over there.
And it's like you say, it's a numbers game, and it's not for everybody, right? Not everyone's in the market for it, or is ready for it, or it's that time in their business. But we're not. I mean, again, I'm not. We're not. While we are transactional, that's not what we're about. Like, we're about building a relationship. We want to be able to walk back into that shop at any point and say, "Hey, how are things? It's great to see you again." We want to maintain that relationship.
You want that transformative relationship.
Yeah. And I still call all the people we've moved them to. Yeah, it's like, I still call them. It's like, "Hey, how are things? Like, how's your business? Like, what are you into these days?" Like, I'm not trying to sell them anything. I just want to get to know them, because, again, the finishing world, really the cabinetry world, is not that big. And it's big, but it's not that big. Like, everyone kind of knows everyone, especially when it comes to finishing. Holy smokes, like the circle is small once you get into the finishing world. And so, but it's good, because the one thing I appreciate about this podcast and generally about the finishing world is people are just open most of the time. Like, "Hey, this is what I'm doing. Like, this is what I'm experiencing. This is how it's working for me." Like, it's not typically like this militant, like, "I'm not telling you any of my secrets."
Yeah, I mean, I would say close to 10 years ago, I would say it was a lot of that. And the internet and some of these guys have really changed a lot, which has made it so much better, where everyone's willing to share the information versus, "Hey, screw you. My reduction solution is like mama's secret marinara sauce. I'm not telling you."
Right? Because now you can just hop on YouTube and, like, "I know exactly how to reduce that now." I mean,
it makes a big difference, and it makes it a little more family in this community, which I like. I like that family aspect of it. So at Elevated Finishing, are you, trying to think how to word this? Okay, you guys are associated with Advanced Machinery. Are you doing anything besides the Schubox, or are you specifically Schubox heating systems, or can you sell the Flatlines and stuff? What else do they have to offer?
In Elevated Finishing, so obviously Advanced has that whole side of business with them, right? They're a full service machinery dealer, CNCs, edge banders, saws, Flatlines. There's full service. Elevated Finishing is not. Right now, currently, we do Schubox curing rooms. Eventually, as we get our feet set and as we get our feet planted and start building our network a little bit wider, we're going to bring in more of what Schubox does, right? Like, they do full, booths and flash off rooms and paint mix rooms. They do a ton of powder coating stuff in Europe. They have huge powder coating lines. They have just a wide variety of things that they offer. We're going to grow into that because right now, Elevated Finishing is me, right? So,
you don't want to overload yourself. You don't want to get back to traveling all the time.
But what's fun about it is we have an excellent product. It's a wonderful product. It works very well, and we're excited to stand behind that. And we know how well it works. And we're just getting a foundation, like Kobe, who runs Advanced Machinery. He's like, we're the tortoise in this race. Like, we're not wanting to be a hare here. We're the tortoise. we're gonna get the right foundation. We're gonna consistently move forward, consistently build. We're not trying to make a giant splash and then fade off. We're gonna build our way into one, earning our reputation in the market, and then having the infrastructure that when we take something on, we are fully ready to take something on. We're not going to just hit and hope. We're going to be ready to fully support and embrace all the things we're bringing in. So we are definitely the tortoise in this.
My father-in-law, who I kind of mentored me and got me into the painting business, was in it for 30 something years. And he had a lot of that same mindset that Kobe does is, there's no reason to go into a whole shit ton of debt to grow your company real fast. Do it slow and steady. Pay for your growth. Don't go to debt for your growth. Pay for your growth as you need it. And then you have a monster powerhouse that can withstand any down in the ups and downs in the economy. I mean, you're solid, but you try to get too far out there, you're gonna hurt yourself. So I admire that growth. I didn't think about that, but when he started explaining it to me and started growing the company, I started fully embracing that, and it changes your mentality on taking on projects, but it also makes you unstoppable.
Yeah, exactly right. You have a foundation now that you can launch, and as you grow it, you just launch more things. But you're always balanced, right? You're not over leveraged. You're not strung out. You're not like, oh man, this has to come through or we're screwed. You're like, we know that we can sustain what we're doing, and we're also not putting ourselves out there to customers and like not really being able to do what we say we're going to do. Like, hey, we're going to do this, and then the next conversation is, how are we going to do this? It's, and I get some entrepreneurs, like that's where they run, and that's works for them, and that's fine. That works for them. We're just going to run as hard as we can, and we're going to see what happens. And sometimes it works out great, and sometimes you fall flat on your face. But that's not our strategy here. Our strategy is, hey, we're going to take our time. We're going to make sure we do this the right way. We're going to make sure we create the right relationships. We're going to try things. We're going to take risks for sure. And then when they fail, we're going to try something else. But we're not going to explode or try to explode and then just fizzle. Like, that's not what we're about.
That's awesome though. I mean, I'm excited to see what else that Schubox offers down the road, because I think that'll be, are you guys going to do Flatlines? Do they do any type of Flatline system that you guys might bring in to partner with it?
Yeah, they do Flatline systems. That's a delicate thing, because there's so many dealers and vendors, and you know how that goes, man. It's you got to be careful because everybody has an idea on that, and they was like, well, you can't sell it here. And the big part of it is being able to market this product nationally. And there are some things, obviously, when it comes to Flatlines that you don't get nationally. So it goes to the people in that region or in that space. And so we're always looking for a good opportunity like that. We're definitely bringing more things under the umbrella. We're going to offer more things. We're going to support and promote more things. But again, we're going to find the ones that work well for us that we can support and maintain.
The great thing that just in the short amount of time that I've been doing the podcast and absolutely loving it, all the networking side, I was talking to, I think it was Robert Chicky. We were talking when we recorded his episode and really got a great connection going. And then he had heard a couple episodes and he's like, hey, give me an introduction to this guy. I've got something for him. I've got a project we can collaborate on. And then another guy was like, hey, that guy was talking about, what this would be nice to do some sort of software. Can you get me in touch with him? The networking opportunities that we have and the collaborations where a finisher may reach out to me and be like, hey, what's Ryan's contact info? I've got a piece of equipment that I need. I want to know if they've got it. It's really awesome. It's kind of like you're just putting puzzle pieces together and letting people just run with it, and it's helping everyone. I mean, it's helping an end user and it's helping a manufacturer. It's been a whole lot of fun.
And I think you've done a great job with it. Like I really do. I enjoy listening to it. I enjoy the information I get. I mean, I'm still learning, right? Like when you talk to the surf prep guy, like how he got into it and the way he does his business and what he works. Like I love listening to guys hey, they're 5 years down the road, they're 10 years down the road and starting this because we're new. Like this is a new thing now. Advanced machinery has been around forever. Like those guys know what they're doing. So I'm always talking to them about it. But again, they're a full service dealer, so they're doing everything. Like I really like picking the brains of guys who just live in the finishing world as well. Of like, hey man, how you growing this? Like, what did you do when you ran into this? Or like, how like even guys like, hey, how do you set up your dealer network? What are some of your like ideas on who you go to and who you don't go to? Do you have quotas for them? Do you like put them on some sort of timer? Like I don't know. Like I'm learning. Like this is kind of what I'm doing.
I was the same way when I got into the coding side. I mean, when I was at Centurion, it was, new to me. I understand codings. I understand what they're supposed to do. But again, dealer network, distributor network, minimum orders, shipping minimums. I mean, it's just like a whole nother world. And having that to feed off of other guys is phenomenal. A great guy that is Tritech, Don Applegate. If you ever get the opportunity to talk to him, awesome guy. I think he's over in Europe or in Ireland or somewhere right now, but he's supposed to be back. And I've got to get him on the show, but I've picked his brain so many times when it comes to reps, how to find good quality reps, how you qualify your distributors, just anything along those lines. He's phenomenal wealth of information.
I'll look him up. Don Applegate, Tritech. I'll look him up because we got to walk through that because it's a big part. Because again, like we talked about at the beginning, like I'm not traveling to the U.S. selling this. I'm not going to do it.
That was me. Yeah.
So what my traveling, yeah, I'll ride alongs are great. I'll ride with you. I'll train you, show you what to do. Let's talk about it. Let's learn how to talk about it. These are the questions you ask. Like I'm great. I can do that, but you have to be the face, right? And so most of my job is building that network and supporting them so they feel confident and want to talk about it.
They keyed a phrase at Centurion. I don't know where it came up with, but our goal was to always, every distributor you're at, find a champion, find the one person within that organization that just bites into what you're saying with everything that they have and they're a believer. And then you focus all your training on that person. And then everyone at that company will go to that person.
Oh, that's a great idea.
You're just creating a champion at every, whether it's a finishing company, doesn't matter. You focus on that person and then everyone knows he's the Schubox guy. You go to him with questions. And if he can't answer it, then he's calling you and saying, hey, Ryan, I need you to bail my ass out. I can't answer this one.
Yeah. I said this. Is that okay?
Exactly. I mean, it happened. It was a great philosophy. And I don't know where I don't know if it was, one of my predecessors or if it was Tom, who the owner, and Miles, the owners over there, but that system was extremely helpful when you're trying to grow that dealer network, finding those people that just say, oh, this is the best thing in the world. I want to know everything about it. The machine geeks that you're going to find at every little place that just want to know every in and out.
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. And so, yeah, that's a great feedback because you're exactly right. If someone believes in a product, like they're just going to talk about it. You don't have to tell them to talk about it. They're just going to talk about it. And they're going to walk into a shop and think, this product's on my mind. I see this space. Let's talk about it. And that's kind of how you want to build it. And so you want to make sure they're confident if what you have, they believe in it and they know, like when they come to you, like, hey, Ryan's always got my back in this, like, let's go, so that's kind of relationship I want to build.
Yeah. They're great. They definitely make the growth a lot more obtainable.
Yeah, and it's just sustainable, right? You don't have to go hold everyone's hand. He's like, you know what to do. You have training. You know how to answer these questions, and if you don't, your colleague over here knows them all. He spent the time.
What about, before we wrap up here, just give the community some resources that they can go to find out more about Schubox, social media or website. Where do they go?
Yeah. So our website is elevatedfinishing.com. Just go there. You'll see, our products at elevatedfinishing.com. Same thing at Facebook, and LinkedIn, right? You can look me up in LinkedIn. I generally do most of the posting. I do all the posting for Elevated Finishing, which is another thing that you just kind of got to do, which, you got to do all the posting. You got to do all the legwork. So you can find the stuff there. Most active on LinkedIn, more so than Facebook. I'm trying to get the Facebook going. We're eventually going to have our own YouTube videos. That's in the works. So we're building it. Again, it's a process. We're going to start building more and more out as we grow, and so that's where you can find us, elevatedfinishing.com or my LinkedIn. Look me up, Ryan Randall or Elevated Finishing. They're both going to be on there.
Awesome. Well, I won't keep you too much longer. Ryan, man, awesome talking to you. I appreciate it. Hopefully I'll get to see you over at IWF.
Let's say if you come to IWF, come see us. We're booth, 10509 Hall A.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to be there. I'm flying out Wednesday. Going to be there Wednesday to Friday. So
perfect. Well, yeah, definitely come by and say hi, Zach, for sure.
I'll come by and say hi and do a little live video. But you got socials, man. Awesome talk, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on the Bearded Finisher. Maybe let's plan another one here in a couple 6 months and see how the progress is going and if there's any new products coming out.
Yeah, I need to interview you at some point. I want to hear more about your story. I've heard pieces of it, but I'm really interested in the decisions that led you to where you are, man, because it'd be interesting to hear about.
Yeah, I'm always open to share my story. It's a little crazy one. People hear it and it's different, but
it makes it the most interesting.
Exactly. All right, man. Well, I appreciate everybody listening to this episode. Stay tuned, and we will look forward to seeing everybody next week.
And that's a wrap on this episode of the Bearded Finisher Podcast. We thank everyone for joining. Keep hustling, keep learning, and never settle for anything less than your best. Remember, the path to perfection is a journey, not a destination. Until next time.